Okay, and then
Are we light now?
So we are going to be, Mike and I are going to be talking about menopause and talking to men about menopause. We're going live on my Zoom into my womenswellbeing.me space, but thought we might actually also put this on Instagram too. So I think this is going on Instagram.
If this is my first Instagram live.
Same. So hi. Oh, look, somebody has joined. So this is going live. Hi, live Instagram. And
so weird.
So weird. So listen, my name's Linda Stevens and I run womenswellbeing.me. I run yogamums.net as well. And this talk is specifically for perimenopausal women and their partners. And the reason I decided to talk to Mike, my husband, live about perimenopause in particular is because I firsthand have experienced just how dramatically a relationship can be affected by this extraordinary hormone change at perimenopause in the years leading up to the actual menopause. So, and the reason I asked Mike, aside from any other man, is
handy having to be here.
is also because Mike teaches yoga birthing for couples with me, and he has a very good understanding of the effect of female hormones. And so having that knowledge prior to me going through perimenopause, I think it's probably helped you understand to what extent hormone dysregulation can affect every part of our physiology.
I had absolutely no idea about hormonal change. Well, I had some mention of hormone changes, but actually, as Linda has become more and more knowledgeable in this area, I've seen the impact on Linda and on us too. And so I'm delighted to be able to share my thoughts and experiences of living with someone who is going through perimenopause. I never thought I'd be saying those words on camera live.
So I thought it might be good if I just kind of like interviewed Mike, and then if anyone has got any questions, then just put them in, and we'll see what we can do as far as
answering. Go and give some people a wave here.
Oh, look at you doing like
gifting
waves. So, but a little bit of preamble. The perimenopause is actually a time of hormones starting to slowly go down as the ovaries shut up shop, basically. And it can last 2 years, it can last 10 or even 12 years. So most of us, and I know this is certainly me, kind of thought, well, menopause is something that happens to kind of 50-something, 60-year-olds. And yet now when I look back, I recognize that probably after my third baby at 40, I don't think my progesterone ever came back up again. So when we sort of allow for women who've had babies, we know that, depression, etc., can be a real thing. We expect those hormones to be fluctuating. We give a lot of space to women, don't we, who have had babies, and yet it's actually not a dissimilar hormonal change that we experience in perimenopause. And so it was that time that actually things, and the symptoms were so disparate and could be put down to so many different things that I certainly didn't recognize that I was in perimenopause at all. I was just a bit of a moody cow, wasn't I, really? Or
not for me to say, certainly not here anyway. But I think also is the fact that everyone's experience seems to vary, and some people don't have such extreme, not that you had extreme, but such extreme fluctuations. And I think that maybe some of what we're about to talk about might resonate with some, but not others.
So statistically, 75 to 80% of women will experience symptoms that actually are attributable to progesterone dropping quite dramatically in normally your early 40s, and then estrogen levels slowly starting to fluctuate as the ovaries do sort of the last push to try and get you pregnant in your 40s before they shut up shop for good. And then over time, the estrogen starts to drop down until you eventually haven't had a period for a whole year. And at that point, you've hit menopause, and then you're postmenopausal. So only about 20% of women don't have some form of symptoms, and quite a significant number
80% do.
80% do, and a significant number of those women, the symptoms can derail them. And 1 in 10 women end up leaving their jobs because of perimenopausal symptoms. So I might just say some of the main symptoms, and then we can talk about stuff that affected me and obviously you.
That's me, yeah.
You. So often in early perimenopause, it's actually the lowering estrogen, and it affects your brain, and also the progesterone affects your brain. So big mood swings and anxiety. I mean, I went from being somebody who was not anxious at all to having sudden heart palpitations and real anxiety. So that's something that can happen. Hang on, I'm just going to fiddle around with this. Can you just keep talking for a second?
Do you want me to figure out
that? No, you just talk about the anxiety and the depression and stuff.
From my experience as a trainee counsellor, but also being married to Linda and just seeing the impact of going through these hormonal changes, Lindy felt really that she wasn't the same person that she used to be. And there were some real senses of some anxiety, but not just anxiety, also going through shame, guilt, and anger. And these are really, really powerful emotions. And I think that actually to go through those yourself is itself troubling, but probably I'd imagine from your perspective, going through and then not knowing that you're going through them, but also feeling you're going through them in isolation is probably also quite troubling too. And as a partner and as a guy, to actually, I wish I'd known earlier the fact that the impact of your own mental health that menopause would have.
Yeah,
I think that you went through lots of, in a sense of anxiety about, golly, am I ever going to go and come right again? And I think there was certainly some anger at times.
Still is. It's not like that's gone away completely, but I think one of the hardest things for women initially can be this, heightened anxiety or just low mood, when you just don't actually feel like it. You were really sociable before, and suddenly you just like, I really don't feel like seeing people. And then is there something wrong with me? Why don't I feel like going out? Or you're out and you're just like, I just want to go home. I'm not enjoying myself. I had heart palpitations where I was like, oh my God, is there something wrong with me? And obviously the insomnia, shocking insomnia for a very long time. And of course, when you're tired, that alone is going to make you turn into a bit of a monster, a bit irritable. I also would get overwhelming at different, and it was very cyclical. Overwhelming. I come to the kitchen, and if it was messy, which is quite often our kitchen, I'd be like, oh my God, please, could you just tidy up? I can't, I'd be like, there's literally no surface that's clean. I'd get really stressed, feel like I was being strangled by the mess. And you'd be like, what's she on? What's wrong with her?
There's quite a lot of mess around. So,
that for me was suddenly becoming very irritable and intolerant of, well, you really, and our family,
I think things that you would find would be irritating anyway suddenly provoked anger rather than just irritation.
Yeah, yes, that's fair. And then I'll be fine the next day. This is the crazy thing. So this is literally because the estrogen goes like that day in, day out. So one day you might be absolutely fine, and the next day really not. Next day, if your estrogen's really high but your progesterone's really low, that differential, that can be when you've got more, real forgetfulness, brain fog and forgetfulness, can't remember words. And it's not just like, you've written something in the diary and I was talking to somebody about this the other day. It's like your brain doesn't see words properly or numbers properly. So it says 11:30, but your brain says 1:30. And you're utterly convinced that the appointment's at 1:30.
We've missed quite a few appointments of various things, schools, sort of deadlines whizzing by, that things that were in the diary or in our mind diary, but actually they're just
gone. And then it's not like I then go, oh, of course, oh yeah, it's like that memory's not there. It's literally not there. And so, and that's very disconcerting. I know there's some, pretty famous people like Eureka Johnson, who thought she had early onset Alzheimer's, and it can feel like that, and it can be incredibly isolating to feel that you're losing your mind. So actually, to understand that it's not you, it's your hormones, and that it can be incredibly validating, but also for your partner to understand.
There's a reason for it. I think that sort of after birth, when your hormones just change, and I guess with a teenage daughter going through puberty, when hormones are fluctuating anyway, so it is with with perimenopause. And I think it's coming back to the idea that, speaking from a guy perspective, I always thought menopause was a thing that happened, and I guess that's true. It's a point in time, but I think the important thing as a person living with a perimenopausal woman is to know the fact that this thing exists, and it's a period of time, years, and it's not one isolated event. It's not bang, menopause has happened, and it's like you go through a door, but actually it's a journey, and there's a lot of stuff that happens in the run up to that. Because all menopause it's just a medically defined point in time, isn't it? It's 12 months without a period.
Exactly. Yes. So and that's key, that it's not necessarily the menopause that is literally a time and a moment in time. It's the time before that, and afterwards, and also the fact that there's so little information around. There's more here in the UK now, but there wasn't a couple of years ago when I had a real crash. I was experiencing lots of breast changes, dryness and issues down below, massive mood changes. I couldn't sleep. I had really bad IBS, so we know that progesterone smooths the intestines. So often women get much worse digestive issues when they're in perimenopause. So I had all of the stuff going on, and I was constantly going to doctors going, and there's this, and I'd be sent off to see a gastroenterologist and have testing for Crohn's disease, and I was sent off to see a gynecologist who very, very unhelpfully said to me, "Oh, do you think your husband's been faithful to you?" Which was horrendous, because now I'm like, God, I just needed a bit of estrogen cream. But anyway, I was sent off because I had lumps in my breast, incredibly common as your estrogen is starting to fluctuate. Well, I went through the whole, it could be breast cancer, so we're going to need you to just, send you off for. So I did all that stuff. I was offered antidepressants every single time.
Someone's mentioned this. Actually, doctors are also quick to prescribe antidepressants, thinking that's the solution. That's so true. I see that with clients that I'm seeing therapeutically. It's very much a go-to, because these are symptoms, go on antidepressants. That's the kind of, and it's bonkers the fact that this isn't thought of as a if you're a menopausal aged woman, that actually that this should be something that should be front and center. Look at that first.
Well, it's in the NICE guidelines. So the guidelines for all GPs, it's there in black and white that the first line for any kind of depression, anxiety, mood changes for women who are 45 plus should be looking at bringing their hormones back up to a more balanced level. And yet, so few GPs have training in perimenopause. And so I was told, when I was 47, 48, I was told, no, you're too young for menopause, literally dismissed. And I'd be like, it's cyclical. I can feel it. I'm not.
Women in their 20s can go through menopause. It's not an age thing where it's always going to be mid to late 40s.
Average. But yeah, you're right. And if you've had any kind of cancer treatment, you're likely to go through it earlier. If you've had a hysterectomy, you're likely, even if you've kept your ovaries, you're likely to go through menopause at least 2 years earlier than you might otherwise. So it's and the lack of information and understanding for us as women is bad enough. But then to try and explain why you've got no libido, and that's a big thing, because I think we've always had a good.
I'm going to start flushing now. So
I know we've got a good
Karen, David, if you're watching this, please just go make a cup of tea or something.
but it's when you just don't feel like it. Like there's just nothing there, no desire at all, and that unfortunately is estrogen is dropped away. You don't have that libido back. So luckily I'm now touch wood, I've started supplementing back with
not touching wood.
That's
it.
That's sick and it's wrong. So what was I saying? I forgot.
This has gone way down south.
So you're talking about going down south. So
no, we weren't.
Well, we sort of were, but the point being, for men to be understanding that this doesn't mean it's like this forever at all, but during these years it really can be, you just don't feel like it at all. And also there's all sorts of this stuff that's going on with your body, and you don't know what's going on with your body. So I think there's an element of shame, embarrassment, also even just cuddling and kissing. You're like, oh God, Lean's going to want to more, and I just can't. I can't. So how did that make you feel?
I think the hormonal journey. Gosh, I can't believe I'm talking about this.
Come closer so they can see you.
Sorry.
Close.
Well, I think the hormonal changes sometimes, that you are quite lovey, and so sometimes the hormone fluctuations do work in my favour, I should say. But yeah, I think that it has been tough at times when our libidos have been rather out of sync.
It's a nice way of putting it. Our libidos have been out of sync.
That's well, I don't want to be the one to say it, but I'm generally a bit more. Yeah,
well, you're a man and I'm a perimenopausal woman, so that's But the also a lot of for women, one of the main areas of our bodies when the estrogen drops, one of the main and the first part, the kind of ports of call, if you like, is around the pelvic area. So a lot of women coming into their early 40s will start experiencing a bit of leaking for the first time, and dryness, even though dryness is not really the right word because it's around the vulva. So there's a discomfort. So like just wearing your knickers and things can be uncomfortable. And actually it's because the whole area is very estriol rich, which is one of our 3 types of estrogen. And so even if you don't supplement all the hormones in the rest of your body with HRT, you can use just topical, very low dose estrogen cream, which can just help the muscles and the muscle fibers become a little more elastic and more lubricated, just massively, dramatically take down the incidence of UTIs, of thrush, and just make everything a bit more comfortable, because it can be really painful having sex when it's all a bit dry. There's no lubrication, so it's painful. So that's another reason why you might not.
Just hearing you say that, I just so hope your parents are watching this.
Yeah, so am I. I don't think they're on Instagram,
no,
so that's good.
Right.
But the other thing is just being completely okay with lubrication. So just okay, I won't go any more into that because that's embarrassing, but that's something that can be really helpful as well. And knowing it all gets better, I think that's the thing, that it's not necessarily. A lot of relationships actually break up around this time, and potentially because there's a lack of communication, there's a lack of feeling like you're being understood, there's shame, there's a sort of a breakdown potentially there's a lot more isolation.
But I think if the guys knew, I think that it's been helpful for me to actually intellectually understand the processes that your body's going through on a chemical level, and actually how they have an impact on your emotions and also your physiology. And actually maybe as a guy, a bit right brain, left brain, whatever it is, but to actually, there's a reason for this, and that reason is going to change, and it's not you, this is the new you for forever and ever. I was saying it's a little bit like a Forrest Gump kind of thing, when it's living with a perimenopausal woman. It's sometimes you never know what you're going to get. Yes. Did you wonder where that was going?
I did, yeah. It's like Forrest Gump, really. Thanks.
No.
But so I wanted to talk about a time, 2 years ago, I ended up having a breakdown, and I had lots of perimenopausal issues going on, but I didn't realize what they were. I didn't realize it was hormones, which is ridiculous because I work in women's health, but I didn't realize that was happening to me. And I kept pushing through, expecting myself to be able to work at the pace that I used to. And we'd had a bit of a health scare with Mike prior year. So I think I was in a heightened level of stress. And now I know, when you're perimenopausal, you just cannot keep pushing through fatigue. You've got to rest. And I'm really good now at just saying to Mike or the kids, I've got to go and do a meditation, or I've got to go and just rest for a bit. And you kind of,
just out the way. I'm a supporter of that. Go and have a lie down. Disappear off for a few hours.
But I didn't. And so 2 years ago, I was trying to do, expand my business and do lots of stuff and bring in more money. And I was pushing through, and so lots of dizzy spells. And then I had vertigo, which is apparently a pretty common perimenopausal issue. But again, doctor was like, no, the only time you have vertigo is if there's something wrong with your ears, nothing to do with hormones. And like a robot, she didn't really talk like a robot. And I had a breakdown, and it was really, really scary and horrible. And the biggest thing that came out of it, though, was that Mike was there for me, and he held space for that. And you really did just say, you're safe and you're okay, and I'm here for you. And that was the best thing you could possibly have done.
That was literally at the time of the breakdown, wasn't it? But it's also, I suppose, in the weeks and dare I say it, months afterwards, I think that you were dealing with because for Lindy, she's has this aura of health and wellness and so on, and being a yoga teacher, but quite frankly, the reality at home is rather different.
I used to love chocolate.
Yeah. So that she's not this health freak that you might think that she is at her time. But actually, so therefore, I think there was a lot of sense of shame for you when you felt that.
Yeah.
I think that and there was guilt because you felt that you wanted to go and push through to your, for your clients and for your community. But actually, this was a time where you really needed to stop and look after yourself. Yeah. And it was important that I think that you felt safe enough to be able to say, I need some help and some attention myself.
But it was because you allowed that. And I think that was the key that I was trying to say, is that any guys that end up watching this know that if your partner is right at that breaking edge, it's not going to be forever, but the best thing you could possibly do is to hold space and say, you're safe, I've got you. Don't push through this, and do whatever you can to allow her to have some time out and to heal, basically, and to get rest and to get some help, which is what you luckily did do. And I'll be forever grateful for that, because that was huge. And I know it was, and also he came to a doctor's appointment with me when I finally got to see my GP. He came with me, and because I couldn't speak at that stage. I was really broken, and I was just crying and really not well. And the doctor was, very much sort of, you got your 7 minutes and then you're out. And she looked at Mike and she's like, how long has she been like this for? And Mike was saying, well, she has told you since she had this breakdown. And he was really the voice of reason when I couldn't speak properly. So
I'd imagine, to be fair, from the GP's perspective, you would have thought, gosh, here's another lady, let's just give her some antidepressants and move on.
Yeah, but I mean, that's exactly it. This is the
that's what she wanted.
That's what she did do. Yeah. So yeah, this is getting a bit sad now. I don't, but it actually has all ended up on a positive note, from that, I ended up seeing a specialist doctor who specializes in hormone therapy and in women in perimenopause. And I realized that actually my hormones were really low and I needed to bring them up in order to start to balance my brain and start to feel better. That these days there are body identical hormones, which means they're molecularly exactly the same as what our own ovaries produce. And once I understood that, because I was very anti prior, I was a bit happier to at least try them to see if I could just help myself get over that point. And so finding out about what's out there now as opposed to what was out there 20 years ago, I think is really, really important. And that clarity, that starting that, and then also just stopping completely, which I had to, because I pushed past that point of no return kind of thing. And you allowing me to do that, if you like, you sort of saying to me, you're not going, you just, it's just
clear the diary and
clearing it. Yeah. So Mikey ended up just.
It's almost like being one thing we talk about in our yoga birthing courses, and I coach the dads on, is when you come home from hospital, if you have a hospital birth, is the importance of the guy being the gatekeeper to a new mum, and really policing about when people come in and moving people on so they don't hang around too long and get in the way, quite frankly. And I think in when you were in the breakdown mode a couple of years ago, that's what you needed, that too. And so therefore
yes,
needed to take control and actually give you that space and be a gatekeeper for you for a while.
That's exactly it. It was me being able to take off the hat of, you know, the shame of having to say, no, I can't go out to something, or I just literally don't have the energy to do something, or
I think there's also a sense that you felt, I think partly that you felt you might have been letting me down if you were saying, I can't go out to that dinner tonight.
I did.
And so for me to be able to say to you, look, I can see what a state you're in, let's not go out tonight, rather than you feeling that you had to go and push through yet again.
Yes, yeah.
But to actually say, let's not go out, because normally I'd be the one, yeah, let's go out, but sort of, but to actually say, no, that's not, you need to prioritize yourself.
Yeah, and it is that and it's such a big thing to get your head around, especially if you've always been somebody who does lots of stuff, to recognize you have to look after this vessel, you have to do whatever it's demanding, because you can't really do anything else. And if you do keep pushing through, it's only going to get worse. And that's, you know, this big thing I've learned is the adrenals, which take over a bit of production of our hormones once our ovaries starts to stop producing them. If you're stressed, so if you're exhausted, or even if you're doing too much exercise, the adrenals will produce cortisol and not the estrogen and progesterone and testosterone that they could be producing. So then you're even in more depletion and you're just utterly exhausted. So really important to listen when you're tired, and it's a difference between tired and utterly like you've got a lead blanket over your head and you just can't move, you're so tired.
So you get a couple of comments coming through. If you've got any questions, feel free to put them in on the chat. Gosh, I sound like someone's at the YouTube doing saying that.
I know, we've got absolutely no idea.
We don't know what we're doing at all.
Yeah. So yeah, and I'm hoping that, I'm just not sure if in my group I can.
I'm not sure if this is being recorded.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. So the other thing also to know that you can be in perimenopause and your periods be absolutely clockwork and absolutely fine. So this is the thing that I think a lot of GPs still will say, well, are your periods regular? And you'll be like, well, yeah, I think so. And you're like, well, you're not in perimenopause. But actually, that isn't an indication of whether you are or not. And similarly with blood tests.
Wait, hang on. So if that's not, what is?
So basically, your periods might still be pretty regular. They might be a bit more scanty, or you might get the odd flooding. Do you remember I did that one time? I just a long time ago.
I think, are we oversharing?
Yeah, oversharing. That's oversharing. But
no, it's important. No, it's fair.
But they can be regular, because I remember thinking, well, no, mine are pretty regular, so that's, you know, I must be too young for this. And so it's not necessarily your periods. And similarly with blood tests, if you're prior to 45, there's a blood test through the NHS that will tell the GP whether you have stopped ovulating full stop and you are, post-menopausal now. But because every single day our hormones are going up and down, up and down, up and down, it's almost impossible as a predictor to do blood tests. Once you're potentially on estrogen and especially testosterone and progesterone, then you can have tests to see what your levels are like after you've supplemented. But as a actual prescription, what do you say? As an actual indicative thing, as a marker, if you like, blood tests aren't. So actually now what they do is they look at your history in great detail and look at your symptoms. And it really is, if you're kind of over 40 and up to 51 or so, and you've got, vaginal dryness or issues with recurrent UTIs, if you've got aching bones and muscles, if you've got real fatigue, extreme fatigue, if you've got big mood fluctuations, brain fog, insomnia.
Yeah.
God, there's about 35
anxiety, shame, depression. All of these things can feed into them.
Libido. That's a libido. Libido is a big one. Yeah, a bit. I think the anxiety and the depression is the thing that is quite key for a lot of women, and which often is just take some antidepressants.
And it also, it's sort of the anxiety and depression can impact the man as well, the partner, because I guess if you are if you're struggling, and then as a person I'm thinking, A, what can I do to help, but also B, am I in trouble? What have I done? But in fact, it might be just a recognition, an acknowledgement, the fact that your body's going through this without personalizing it.
Yes, yeah, no, that's great. It is. It's not just me. It's not just me isolated. What is wrong with me? Which I think is a really big thing when, when you're already feeling low, to think that you're also not able to talk to, the person that you love the most, and that they might be judging you. And what if they are thinking, oh gosh, your body's old and ugly now, and you're likely to go off with somebody younger. And, there's all sorts of stuff that your mind can go really, can go into quite a negative spiral. So
thinking it's a bit like, we've got teenage children, and I think that the sense that when you've got teenagers, that there's a sense that teenagers, they kind of freak out, they rebel, because it's almost like they've got, like a roller coaster, have that safety belt. They want to make sure, right, let's check the safety belt, is it working? And I kind of wonder whether, as a perimenopausal woman, there's a sense that actually I'm going through this change, and I kind of want to go and push. Not that maybe it's a bad example. Not that you need to be.
I think it's just that safety.
Feeling
like you're
checking the boundaries,
but also feeling like your partner is creating safety for you. It's safe to say, I feel like shit today. Oh, my brain is so foggy. I don't know what's wrong with me. And for them not to go, yeah, what's wrong with you? My mum was fine. She seemed to sail through menopause. What's wrong with you? But sweetheart, it's not you, it's your hormones. And we're going to get through this together. And listen, if you're too tired to go out tonight, either I can go by myself or we'll stick on a DVD and
or create
DVD,
space.
Netflix.
But also, just go and do your thing. It might be go and have a lie down in a hammock or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And and understanding that for us, it's like when you've never had a baby before, you have your first baby, and you imagine it's going to be a certain way, and you imagine you're going to be a certain type of mother, and then suddenly you're like, oh my God, I can't make this thing sleep. I don't, my boobs don't do the feeding thing that they're supposed to, and my tummy's not going down compared to Kate Middleton's, and whatever. We're so good at being incredibly mean to ourselves, and it's the same, I think, in perimenopause, when we're like, well, everybody else seems to be out running, why can't I run now? Or everybody, it's a shocker.
Yeah, social media are terrible for that, because there's all that FOMO, but it's also got to keep up with so-and-so, not specifically, but just generally, that there's messages in society, the fact that women are doing this, X, Y, Z. But I think that what's great now, the fact that there is more acknowledgement of menopause and perimenopause is, I know that Davina McCall's documentary last week, for instance, we were at a 50th last weekend and met someone, and then was explaining what she's doing, and this lady said, "Oh yeah, that's very much, you're a woman of the moment, really." And I think that's great, the fact that this is finally being acknowledged.
So do I.
And the fact that there's more of a spotlight being put on it in the medical world, but also the fact that more women are actually able to say, wow, this is going, this is what I'm going through, and there's a reason for it, but also hopefully for their partners to be able to say, okay, I get it, I can understand, and I can therefore empathize, because you can't empathize with something if you don't understand it. And I think that if you understand it, you can then empathize with it, and I think then you'll be in a better place to actually to deal with what you're dealing with.
And it's really important, I think, for men not to think it's them, like not to go on the defensive and go, oh, well, she obviously doesn't think I'm attractive because she doesn't want to have sex at the moment, or she's so moody and shouty, she obviously doesn't love me anymore, what's wrong with me, but try, and that must be incredibly hard when you're, getting it with all barrels, but to really understand that it is a dramatic hormone upheaval for many women, not all, there's some women who sail through, like I said, 20%, so not many. And there's also, I should caveat that for some women, supplementing their hormones with these natural hormones that are now available, not bioidentical here in the UK, you can get body identical on the NHS. You don't necessarily have to go and see a very expensive specialist. And in other countries, it's different. But that's not everybody's cup of tea, but there might need to be some quite dramatic lifestyle changes, and like getting to bed really early and just stopping TV and screens and stuff. And it kind of needs the partner to be like, not going, come on, one more, we'll just watch one more Netflix, but going, no, you need your sleep, let's get to bed.
You're a shocker. She's a shocker on Facebook and Instagram, social media, talking about phone addictions, far out. We don't have to worry about the kids, it's you.
I know. It is. I'm such a bad person.
And that's Linda's her own worst enemy on that front. So it used to be Linda was in bed first, and then I would sort of, come along later. But now it's often. Maybe because I'm an old git now. But actually, that you do need reminding.
More discipline.
You shouldn't need reminding. You should do it yourself. But just to get off the phone.
Yes, I know. Phone's a shocker. That's so true, and it is. But and exercise and just eating better. All of the things that we, it's a lot easier if you do it as a partnership, isn't it? It really is. So, is there anything? I'm just thinking if there was a dad, or there's a dad, we're not doing yoga birthing. If there was a man out there who is just at that point where like, what's wrong with my wife? She's only 43,
lots of men
for example.
thinking that.
She's like, what is going on with her? She's become really moody. She doesn't want to have any intimacy with me anymore. She forgets everything. She's always complaining of being tired. What would you want them to know if you could summarize?
I think.
I was going to say, if you could summarize this decade.
How long have we got? I think just being aware that what these changes can mean, and the fact that I think from a bloke perspective, it's very easy to jump to the conclusion, oh, it's about me. And the fact that you're stroppy because you're stroppy, or you're stroppy because what have I done, and it's therefore for me to get defensive. And I think that it still happens, where I can respond to Linda's irritation by getting angry myself.
So maybe if you just, what do you need from me is I think that would be a really nice thing to so say you recognize that I was not being rational, that I was extremely exhausted, and I was, for example, we're coming in and just going, which does happen cyclically, where I freak out at how messy the kitchen is. Mm-hmm. Then just saying, obviously you just tidy up the kitchen rather than saying what you need from me, but being aware of being that container, being that safe space. What can I do to help, or just listening rather than trying to necessarily solve.
I guess it's a two-way thing. There are times where I think I would suggest, that we tend to use humor, don't we, in terms of, I will with love and compassion call her out when I think she's being unreasonable. So it's not a free rein for Linda to be arsy and stroppy the whole time. So, and I'm not.
No, you're not. But I have my moments.
But I think that gosh, this sounds a bit like couples counselling, I guess, really, which is who are we to give that? But
exactly.
But almost to have a like a referee, a red and yellow card to say,
you're out in the shed.
2 strikes and you're out. Yeah. But actually say no, because in a marriage, I think that need boundaries, so that yes, that there is this thing that's going on.
Yeah.
But it's not. I'm talking potentially to the guys here. It's not necessarily a free pass to go and say to be stroppy in the fact that I will accept everything that you might feel like but I think the important thing is to understand, for me or for any partner to understand that this is what Linda's going through.
And the hormones run us. They literally run the thoughts that come into our brains. And that's, I think, really important to understand, that it's not that this person has suddenly become that it's not that they have turned into a crazy person, even though they might be acting like a crazy person. They're not actually crazy. It's just that their hormones are creating behaviors that are unusual.
Yeah.
That's a very diplomatic way of putting it, isn't it?
Rather than a red yellow card.
Anyway. Yeah. So is there anything else you wanted to
think
say?
Never having done one of these before, I hope that's been helpful to someone.
I don't even know if
it may not.
Anyway.
Yeah, I think it is. But thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for coming and chatting. I just thought it might be helpful especially for partners who are just going, because women don't know what's going on, to be honest. So how on earth are their partners to know what's going on? So for both of you to become educated around this stage and not sweep it under the carpet. I'm a Kiwi, so I'm a little bit more at ease talking about stuff. I'm not so stiff upper lip as a lot of English people are. And so I'm constantly listening to my poor son, who's 15, he's like, Mum, could you just stop talking about menopause? But I'm like, but you're going to be the most amazing partner one day, and you're going to be able to look up.
There's lots of eye rolling from the kids when Linda's up on one.
Yeah, but my daughter has helped so many of her friends who are complaining about their mums turning into, screaming banshees, and like, what's wrong with my mum? She's just, she's so hard to live around. And my daughter's like, she could well be perimenopausal, and you should tell her to watch this Channel 4 documentary and stuff. So it's all good. Yeah. So I think, unless there's any sort of questions, we might as well we'll wrap it up. But knowing that it's not just something that happens, it's something that goes over many years. It is slowly our hormones are dropping away because nature's saying that's it, no more babies for you. Sadly, there are about 400 different pathways in our body that respond to the progesterone, the estrogen, and testosterone in particular. There's lots of other hormones. But when these drop off, it really can affect our bone health, our heart health. And women have different types of heart attacks than men, but the number one killer for women is heart disease and heart attacks. It can really affect our brain, how we think, how foggy our brain is or not, what we remember, how we find words or not. it very much affects the pelvic area, the pelvic muscles, the lubrication of the mucosa around the pelvic area, just so much. So just being aware that it's not necessarily just you, it's likely to be your hormones, and that this stage affects partnerships and whole family, doesn't it? And it is I feel like it's a whole family issue. I
think we talk about it with the kids as well. So the kids are also hopefully growing up knowing the fact that this is something that mum is going through, and that therefore when there's a bit more yelling in the house, when the kitchen's not quite up to scratch, or whether
it's not just about the kitchen, is it? It's not just about the kitchen at all. But also because we've got 2 teenagers and then a nearly 10-year-old, and so you can tell when your teenagers are having a big hormonal surge, because there is a lot more argy-bargy and door slamming and stuff, and you go, oh well, there's a little bit of the hormone surge going on there. So it's quite nice to be able to say.
I just take my hat off to friends of mine, Griff and Pete, for instance, who have got 3 daughters, as well as a menopausal wife too. So if you're listening or watching,
at least we can laugh. Laugh. This is the important thing. Bit of humor.
Exactly.
Anyway, thank you so much for joining me doing this, and guys, we'll say goodbye and have a lovely weekend. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
So I think we just need to how do we stop this? Don't actually know how to stop a live, so
in meeting
there.